We're going to be talking about overcoming the next legacy system. So legacy. Got a terrific panel here. I will let them each give a bit more of a substantial introduction, but very quickly, we've got Madhu Tadikonda, CEO of Corvus Insurance, Megan Duty, SVP, Puritan Life, Brandon Winks, Customer Digital Technology Director at American Family, and Asif Hussain, the RPA Practice Head and Solution Architect, that's my space, at Royal Cyber. So welcome all of you. Let's kind of get some quick insights. Megan, we'll start with you.
Sure, thanks, Chris. So like you said, I'm Meg Duty. A little bit of background on me. I've spent 20 years in the financial services sector, primarily in operations, about 10 years in technology, and I just entered the insurance space within the last 3 to 5 years. So pretty new to this space, but not new to tech or operations in the financial services area. Like Chris mentioned, I'm a Senior Vice President at Puritan Life. The exciting thing about us is we're an all-cloud carrier. So we're a small shop headquartered in Scottsdale, Arizona. And through a series of acquisitions and strategic retirements, my team and I have been able to make us an all-cloud carrier. Pretty rare, especially at our size. And we've been around since the 50s, so it's not like we spun up completely natively in cloud. We've just been able to manage that along the way. Something we just recently built was a wholly online digital distribution agency for annuities, which is called Canvas Annuity. And while I love to talk, modern tech and there's my mic, okay, and the sexiness of innovation, I'm also really excited to be here to talk about legacy tech. And I'm just gonna adjust that a tiny bit. I know we're the last thing between you guys and happy hour, but I promise, and I think I speak for you guys as well, this will be an engaging and interesting conversation that should go by blink of an eye.
Brilliant. Love it. Cheers, Megan. Asif.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Asif. I am a practice head for automation from Royal Cyber. I've been helping customers develop software and provide technology consulting for like 20 years now. Primarily these days I'm working for automating processes, basically more of the sort of processes that are repetitive and mundane in nature. Royal Cyber is a consulting service provider, pretty much available, have offices around the globe in all 5 continents. We have a big customer base in financial sector, and a lot of insurance companies are also working with us, and we're providing them consulting services on automation front as well as cloud services and other technology fronts.
Awesome. We'll dive into that more for sure. Madhu.
Yes, I guess in terms of background, so my first couple decades were consulting and venture capital, completely outside the insurance industry. And then I found the light about a dozen years ago and joined AIG. And one of my first roles there was as the global chief underwriting officer for all of the property casualty businesses worldwide, which is a real sort of school of hard knocks when it comes to legacy systems. AIG writes in 90 countries, 70 different lines, from $50 policies to the most complicated multi-million-dollar ones. And crossed with that were systems everywhere from spreadsheets to $100 million plus, vended solution, policy admin systems, and things like that. So I learned really everything about don'ts and do's, mostly don'ts, about how to get sort of real systems leverage for underwriters and in P&C insurance. So fast forward now, I guess 5 years since I left AIG, and now I'm CEO of Corvus Insurance, which is a cyber-focused MGA. And so what we really need to succeed is, just imagine data elements that change all the time, tens of thousands that we use to underwrite, constant policyholder engagement, 365 days of assessing risk and giving responses. The policy language changes all the time, and we write on behalf of a dozen risk capital partners. So the degree of difficulty goes up in all of those, but I think we pull it off and we do it in a way that technology is actually an advantage for us. And part of that is, I think, a very tight linkage between the business problems, the business owners, and the tech solutions and how we work together. And the second is, I think, real humility about, even within a new company that's doing that, we always have legacy issues. And there's always parts of our stack or structure or what we built that doesn't suit us anymore or is changing. And making that sort of constant evolution and not running from the legacy or thinking, let's just do this big thing and we'll be done, making it sort of a constant evolution and baking that into DNA is, I think, really how we've been able to succeed.
Super. Cheers. Brandon.
Brandon Winkus, Director of Customer Technology at American Family Insurance. Joined the enterprise about a little over a year ago. Have about a little over a decade another insurance carrier, and before that in apparel, before that in government travel. So kind of all over the place, but really a focus on digital. In my last carrier, we helped them get off mainframe. So real life experience coming into another company that's also has these goals ahead of themselves. How do you create that experience? How can you mitigate the challenges of transitioning off this legacy systems into something that's a little more modern? Say a little bit, still insurance. So,
Okay.
got a lot to speak about.
Some great hairs from that.
I do, yes.
That's right, I got mine too.
All right, no, thanks all of you for being here, and obviously, I think at different stages of that journey, right? I mean, Megan, you're kind of talking about the full stack cloud solution, all the way down to kind of some partial legacy, some hybrid type approaches. So I think, when we talk about legacy, right, there are different definitions of what legacy is, and I think, the early insurtech companies are now dealing with legacy of their own, right? I mean, I think we're that far along that everybody has some form of legacy, one form or another. I really like the question here, and maybe we'll dive straight into this one. It's the one in the middle. How do you plan, prioritize, and execute a legacy modernization and measure the business value from such initiative? And I know we had talked a little bit beforehand about, not all legacy is necessarily bad, right? And you don't have to rip and replace everything in one go. So how do you kind of prioritize? How do you plan that? What are some good approaches there? Megan, we'll kick off with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Puritan, we aim to innovate where we want to be different. So for us, that's sales and that's customer service. So that's where we went first to plan and prioritize the modernization. So we didn't start by going and modernizing all core systems, which is where a lot of the legacy lives nowadays. We decided how to build on top of it. And we're, like I said earlier, a small carrier, so we actually use a partnership model. We have partners in the administrative space. We have partners for network management and user support. And we prioritized our modernization for our differentiators and then kept some of our chore work of IT on the other side of the partnership model. And that really made it clear and easy to focus our teams where it mattered most, which for us, like I said, sales and customer service.
Okay, thank you. So partnerships, obviously, a core part of this.
Yep.
Knowing where to build versus buy, perhaps as well. Brandon, anything you can share from your point of view?
Yeah. I think there's a lot to unravel here. So the business value, I think everyone's really interested in how to get off mainframe. So for those that are here, great. Really, you have to identify what is the customer value of making that transition. Like you said, you can put stuff on top, and we came up with a strategy to abstract our customers and our agents from experiencing that transition. But what were we trying to accomplish? And our big goal was we had mainframe systems that had that batch. We wanted real time. We wanted the answers right away. The customer gets it, they know it went through, policy change immediate. Like those are the things that we really set as differentiators to move that dial forward. I think.
Is there a hybrid approach there where you perhaps, depending on the line of business, you could kind of go a full stack straight through processing versus even touching the mainframe?
Yeah, I mean, you can do everything in the mainframe too. Like I don't want to say that you can. It's just whether you want to or whether you want to invest in that. I worked in an apparel company that was 24/7, but yet they were on mainframe. So I think it goes back to the customer. What are you trying to achieve, and what's the value of that return? And for us, in the insurance industry, it was really about that real-time interaction. Can you do it? Yes. And we were to abstract it. We had common APIs linked out to each of the policy administrative systems. It was actually more than one mainframe, it was multiple mainframes all into the same experience. So you want to keep your customers and your agents away from that while still providing new capabilities as they're released.
Massive. We come from I come from an RPA background, as do yourself. So I mean, this is like the perfect technology, right, to use to kind of mitigate some of these challenges.
So before coming towards RPA, I would like to add, like, for one of our customers right from the insurance sector, they had their mainframes working for decades now, and they did not want to get rid of them yet. And we built an interface on top of it to provide microservices architecture through which modern applications can now send and receive data through it. So their System Z applications are still running, and they did not have to go for any migrations, any cross trainings, and the user is getting the modern look and feel now without having to sunset the legacy system. Now, coming towards RPA, that's one way of doing it also. For this customer, we did it through IBM Rational Hats, but RPA, generally now insurance companies already have RPA solutions, and RPA can also help in achieving this goal of integrating those legacy applications that do not have APIs available, and using the UI interfaces. Now we have the power to get them into the overall ecosystem and make them integratable to all the other applications.
All right, no, thanks for sharing that. And when I was with a carrier at Emeritus, we did a similar thing and kind of wrapped an API layer around a lot of the legacy platforms to kind of have a similar outcome. Madhu, what are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting point you made before about even MGAs that are 5-6 years old like us have sort of components that are legacy and things that have changed. And I think there's sort of an inevitability as business strategy and business requirements change that things that you thought were important are going to become less important. Things that you thought had to change all the time actually are more fixed. And I kind of liken it to you sort of do your best and come up with a plan for a house, and then you just kind of keep adding rooms to it. And then at some point you say, hey, look, I got to stop. Every time I go to the kitchen, I can't go through the kids' room, the closet, the powder room, the garage, and we need to build a new wing or do something else or shut that off. And I think that kind of humility about, hey, we're not going to know, we take our best guess and then keep adapting as we go. But there's also a part, I think, of just the ruthlessness about what are we really, really after. And so, at Corvus, we focus really mid-market accounts where human underwriter is in between. There's decision support for that. They trade against a broker. And in that environment, you really don't need a quote in 3 seconds. That was something that you really did need in the small market. On a platform, you do it. Now, you ask any sort of tech person, they'll say, oh, it has to be real time. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that instantly? And it's like, well, that's a big cost to do that, and it doesn't really fit where we think our differentiation is. And separately, we're not really coming up with specific prices or it's really more decision support for underwriters that they can use. So once you start getting very tight about where do we really want to play, where do we need to be excellent, and there's got to be a lot of things that you're just okay, that I think is also a good way to drive it. But there's a temptation to make everything excellent, or hey, if we're going to go through this once, it's going to be painful, and we're going to have to live with this new system for 20 years. Therefore, let's throw everything possible in it, and it's outdated on day one, which is how we used to do things in other places.
Yeah, no. I think a large part of this as well is having the visibility right across your existing systems, platforms, architecture. And I think that's something which is almost, the technology almost becomes agnostic, right, at that point, where you're building the visibility around your existing processes, and then maybe, bringing in a lean process engineering approach or a design thinking approach or a customer journey mapping approach, where you're kind of thinking about the problems you want to solve before going out and solving them. Did you use any of those approaches? I'll throw that out there.
No, absolutely. I think that is the essence of it, which is a lot of back and forth and almost like an anthropological study of everybody who's going to be using this and how are they using it, what do they think it's important, putting prototypes in front of them and getting them to make those trade-offs is absolutely kind of essential to get that part right.
Yeah, I would add to that. When we built our direct-to-consumer agency, we went to our agents and we said, what do customers need solved? Tell us where the friction points are so that we know, where to meet them at. And we built that solution. And once they started using that, we went to the customers and said, what do you want to see? A great example there is our customer portal shows a daily balance update. Now, most tech people would say, oh, it's got to be real time. I need to see every penny I earn. Okay, it's an annuity. So these customers are amazed with a daily balance. In fact, that's more than most insurance companies are offering and completely appropriate for the product. And so it was really sourcing the information first through our agents before we had the customer channel, and then directly from our customers to understand where to meet them and what need to meet, instead of just doing like the highest level of automation in real time.
Right.
Yeah. Asif, anything you'd like to throw out there?
Yeah, knowing the overall company objectives and what you want to achieve is the key, and then getting the feedback, as she said. So both are very important in this aspect. And for automation programs, knowing what sort of automation will create more ROI, or what sort of automation, what process automation will help you achieve your goals faster is the key.
Brilliant. So question down here, I want to ask this one because I used to write VB6 many, many years ago. So what about legacy systems like Visual Basic or VB6, mainframe supported and rock solid, although inflexible, and it is supported and it does what it does well, but older distributed apps, monolithic, unsupported, siloed, how do you tackle that? How do you address those challenges?
I'd love to take that one. I believe your question, whoever put this in, when you say what about legacy systems, I think what you're asking is what to do about these legacy systems. So I'm going to go with it from that perspective. I do want to say I agree they are rock solid. Some of the best design systems I have seen are legacy mainframes. And so it's understanding where they excel. So for us at Puritan, our admin system, again, through the partnership model, so it's not part of our cloud stack, is a Unix-based mainframe. It is a rock-solid processor. And so we use it for that. And then we say, okay, what are the problems? Well, it could be costly. So we need to figure out how to work with our partners to manage the cost. It's distributed across several companies, so that's how we do it through that model. It may not have support. Well, like we were talking about this morning in the main sessions, can you use LLM to help with COBOL? By the way, I know COBOL. I'm not that old, so it still exists. Can you find those resources? And one of the main things we did with this particular mainframe at our TPA, so it does all of our administrative processing. Well, it's limited in growth, meaning I can't go and connect my customer portal to it. I can't connect my sales applications to it, but I can augment it. So I can build a data extract, like you were talking about previously, run it up to the cloud environment, and build all of those things in the cloud. And so it's finding out specifically where are the pain points and what do you need from it that you're not getting, and then looking first to solve that. So I think whoever put this in, great question, but the what to do is see if you can work with it, understand where it excels, and where the deficiencies are, and before you slash and burn, work through those specific issues and your specific use cases in order to solve problems in a specific way, instead of these broad strokes of it's old and it doesn't work.
That's great advice.
Thanks.
Terrific advice. Anybody else care to comment? Any other VB6 experiences?
I wouldn't go VB6, but I think we are in the tech track here, so if I get too far, pull me out.
Do it.
I think separation of concerns is really a big piece we have to follow. So whether you want to call that system architecture, application architecture, even I would say business architecture.
Yeah.
Like, are you building and spending your money in the right places? A lot of times we like to dabble in things we probably shouldn't be. But if you were to take that big monolith, however you want to look at it, there is a way to chop it up. And what you want to do is you want to separate that, and then you want to modernize that in little pieces. We talk about agility, and a lot of times it's around the process and like Scrum or Kanban, or the actual. No, it's really around delivering customer value to market, working software in small chunks. See if it works. Things fail fast out there. Can you succeed fast? It's probably a better way of looking at it. But it's the same thing. Small chunks. Don't jump all the way in. I think we probably have more questions on that. But I would say your first step evaluate your system, and try to separate the concerns, try to separate it in a way that it can be modernized in chunks while still retaining the existing value that it has.
That's brilliant.
I
Go
would
ahead.
like to say that instead of thinking like on what technology a system is built and seeing, okay, this is an older technology, let's get rid of it. Think about why do you want to get rid of it? Is it security issue? Is it lack of integratability, or maybe cost of maintaining it, things like that. And if it is something that you think you cannot live with, okay, then you can go with, and you can analyze that what would be the pros and cons of getting the new one, what would be the business continuity during the migration, what would be the migration cost like.
Yeah.
So stuff like that is really important instead of just thinking that it's built on VB6.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with a robust active server pages web application, right? So, you know,
It should have the same cost value analysis as your entire tech stack.
Yeah.
We shouldn't vilify a legacy because it's old and go on a slash and burn mission for it. It needs to have the same lens of cost value applied to it as you apply to your modern tech.
yeah. So good stuff. So I think that kind of leads into another great question here around the pitfalls. So what pitfalls do you most often find perhaps deal the fatal blows on failed legacy migrations onto new platforms? And I think we've probably covered some of them here, but are there any in particular that
I want to go first.
Yeah, go ahead. Go on.
He's got trauma.
Come on.
I kind of mentioned agile and agility just a minute ago. One of the biggest, I would say, learnings from that is if you're truly doing it, whether you're doing Scrum, you're trying to, finish something within a 2-week, 3-week, whatever sprint is, and move it to market. Like time to market, I feel is a competitive advantage right now. And one of the big things, the way that you can succeed and do that is a thing called WIP, work in progress. You want to see why big projects fail? Too much WIP. Focus and deliver on initiative after initiative. Check them off. Create your list and check them off. Don't have too many things going at the same time. You'll end up with all these dependencies that you didn't know existed. Timelines, well, if you have colors,
like life.
yellow, red. There's a lot of things that pile up there. So yeah, you really want to have that strategy identified and work on it. I'll toss it over to you. You're ready.
I got to listen to it. I'll try some nuance. But I do think, so one is just expecting it's a big bang, that you do this, and then there's some other thing that's going to replace and solve all your problems and fix it, which is the opposite of kind of the incremental approach. I do think there was one kind of ongoing thing, which is, for any kind of tech team within insurance, in general, the business users have zero faith that tech can deliver value for them. And usually when IT shows up, it's like, oh no, this is going to take forever, be expensive, and my life's going to get worse, and then I'm locked into it for 20 years. So it's like there's sort of no faith, and it's, they're mostly right. So I think that kind of rebuilding the faith of, hey, these are small things you can do. Technology actually can add value to you. And I'm going to do something and bring it back to you relatively quickly, see what you think, and see if this actually solves a problem. There's a lot of that of just kind of re-energizing. This tech actually can be a friend and something helpful to you. And I think that starts unlocking a lot of ideas and the ways it really ought to be used, and which things should really be modernized, and which ones are actually working just fine.
Rebuilding the faith, I like that.
That's right.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, Asif, I mean, you talked about
Rebuilding.
microservices, and I mean, these are all things that are kind of components and loosely coupled and so forth. I mean, what else would you like to add?
All right, so as he said, building the faith, and that's the, while we are automating stuff, that's the biggest concern usually from the business user. They say, okay, if they'll automate, what will we do? So to build that faith, okay, we are here to make your job easier. That's the purpose. We are not here to take anybody's job. So that's one component of it, and achieving the goals in a modular fashion is the other part of it. So technology is one, and people management is other. Two fronts that should be handled appropriately to have success.
There's a cultural piece, obviously, to overcoming the legacy.
Yeah, we have a phrase at AmFam around legacy mindset, and I think that's probably in that same realm. Like, it's more than just the technology; it's more than a different way of working. It's really the mindset of the employees and your teams that are building this out. So that's equally as important. It's not purely technical, so good call out there.
Yeah. I'll add a third piece to the technology and the people is the process. So please no collective groaning and eye rolling because we've heard this a million times, but I'll give you an example that I think makes it really clear. You know, if you don't start at the process and understand what's going right and wrong at that point, it does not matter what technology you use or don't. It could be a stone tablet or, you know, your best reporting tool, it's going to be a similar result. So at one point in our combined group of insurance companies, we owned a Medicare supplement agency. When we first bought them, they came to me and said, sales are flat and we really just need a good CRM. Our CRM is bad. Our agents are great, our process is infallible, but the CRM sucks. And so we said, okay, we'll give you the Cadillac of CRMs. You can have Salesforce. We put it in, we paid the money, we spent the time, and sales were still flat because there were several critical activities missing to move our leads down the funnel to conversion. Right. And it doesn't matter if you're using, you know, like I said, a stone tablet, a yellow pad with a pen, or Salesforce. Those things aren't going to close until you start with and understand the process and then apply the technology piece.
Yeah, that's great advice. So, all right, coming back to this idea of rigid systems. If we have rigid systems in place, if we have a kind of a legacy architecture, an enterprise architecture in place, how do we move towards agility? I mean, what does that look like? Brandon?
Yeah, I think this goes down to best practices. I mean, I think everyone's seen playbooks or whatever you want to call them. You know, versioned APIs, code coverage. There's so much. Automate automation. You know, that's one thing I really enjoy seeing when you go talk about automation. It's like someone clicked the automation script. Like, that's not automation. It's to automate it all. So you really want to get those tools out in front. You know, that is part of your pipelines and start following the best practices. They're all out there. This isn't new. It's actually putting them into practice. So I think, you know, that's a start. We talked a little bit about, you know, separation of concerns. And when you start mixing these ingredients together, you'll start to gain some coverage. You'll start to get some automation and some confidence that you can make changes without blowing it all up. So I think there's a lot there. That's my recommendation, like start to create some coverage and some end-to-end.
No, I think it's a similar point, and it's if you've got legacy systems, there's a way to wrap them, there's a way to create interfaces so that you don't actually have to change what's in there just for the sake of changing. I do think the test around agility is when there's something just so core in that system that it's really preventing you from exercising the way you want to in a business context. And so I have an example of sort of policy admin system that for whatever reason had been coded in a way where really all the pricing was coded in, like hard coded in. And so if you wanted to change price, you know, by to 10%, you'd have to go in and find everywhere and add 0.9 times, 0.9 times, you know, in a million places. And so the testing of that, the cost of error, the auditing, you know, and every time somebody touched it, you know, there were systems integrators that would charge $150,000 just to come and check it out. So it just became, okay, we know that we're going to have to change price more dynamically. This is just too core to this, that this is a time when we just have to take out essentially a hard-coded system and do something else. But in general, you can usually make use of pieces of it. There's like headless systems, there's wrapped systems, there's ways to have a service architecture around it that I think you don't have to do a full scrap.
So Megan, I'd like to just add to this question a little bit and kind of bring in the concern or question around governance, right? So the more that we create these layers, additional layers, perhaps we're creating bots around RPA and we're creating additional layers of the APIs and so forth. So there becomes a question around governance, right? And maintaining these systems going forwards and potentially creating additional technical debt to some extent. How do you, Asif, I'll start with you because you kind of spend a lot of time in this space. What do you typically advise companies to do to manage that effectively?
Yeah, it's a genuine concern. And just let me give you an example. Like if we are building layers around an application and anything changes in any of the layers, probably the core system, all the layers may fail, especially if you're integrating through our tool like RPA that is heavily relying on UI. So governance is the answer, and having to know the right people for the right responsibility, everyone clear about what is his role in the entire process. Plus, we implemented for some of our customers a process where any application underlying being used by the RPA code or RPA bot, if it is supposed to go through any change, a new version is coming up, or any screen is going to change, they had to inform a certain team beforehand, and when it goes into their staging, the core application goes into staging, the bots, updated bots also go into staging to test at that stage, so that we don't have surprises when the system moves into production and the bots start to fail.
So there's some discipline there.
Yeah, this is more of a management stuff, less of a technology. So you have to know when things are coming up for change.
Absolutely. And building on that, I want to pull it back to that question for a second about rigid systems and then agile, and point out that agile is a way of operating, and then a rigid system is a piece of tech. And what I would say is, to become more agile, you have to start, like we previously mentioned, with an agile mindset. So you have to manage dynamically. And this is where it feeds into governance. I'll give you an example at Puritan Life. You know, I meet with a change control board at our administrator for our mainframe system, their mainframe system, let me say, monthly, right? And that's enough to approve the deployments and the projects. But our internal team that's focused on strategic development, I meet with change control there daily, because it doesn't make sense to have, you know, something that can be purchased and deployed in a matter of weeks, waiting for a monthly change control board. So, you know, start with agile, manage dynamically in a way that makes sense for each side of the house, and then you can start to manage with and around those rigid systems.
That's great. Good advice. Madhu, Brandon, anything you guys like to add?
No, look, I think that CRM example from before I thought was the right one, which is it's rarely that the technology and its legacy technology is holding back the business value being realized. And usually you don't figure that out till after you spend everything. And so I do think there's a way to just have fewer surprises around that, but really thinking about how do we do this even with a kludgy way to see how the business would operate with this, and do that before you do anything. But the fact that the same handful of case studies about transformations in insurance are used over and over again makes me think there haven't been many. And so I think it's really skeptical about what you think you'll get from this, and then be confident that it's not achievable by other means.
Brandon, anything there, mate? Good?
Governance, I'll pass on governance. It's usually a lot of control and standardization, and there are challenges there, even like just development and moving stuff to market. I think one of the things I didn't really cover, about best practices, which I think a lot of times systems get a bad name for performance and stability. How many companies are actually doing true performance testing? How many companies are truly doing resiliency testing? Controlled chaos. It doesn't have to be like, Chaos Monkey or anything like that, but these are the things that a lot of people can actually take advantage of in current systems. And then maybe realize the gains without actually having to do replacement.
Fantastic. It's a great topic. I think we should spend another half hour.
I think the drinks are out, and we're not going to win that.
I think it's awesome here.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go.
Thank you to all of you, and thanks to you lot for staying.